Greetings, everyone, and welcome to this week's Real Talk with ZSJ. I'm your host, Zakia, and she's the MVP of the Real Talk show. She's back. Alison is back. We always learn so much. I always learn so much from her, and so I'm grateful. And tonight is actually going to be a really good conversation because I know, like, across the spectrum, people are interested in this conversation, like around like crypto and blockchain and decentralized technology. It is all the rage right now. Like even people who don't genuinely follow like finance media, it's all over like my timeline. And I have people across the spectrum as well, like on my timeline, like as far as people who are like, really about like social justice, then people who are, really about like money and finance and like all of that stuff. And then people who are just like neither one of those and they're still into crypto, like, because it's like, oh, really? Because I don't have enough money like to make ends meet. I can hit a lick with this, like, so it's like all of these different groups of people who are really looking for an out, if you will, like people who are looking for a come up, if you will. So I was excited when I saw that Alison was posting about this, and particularly about what's going on with Cardano. And because I know people who are talking about Cardano is like the next thing next to Ethereum. Ethereum is over $4,000 right now. So people are all about like, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Cardano is considered like the third one and all of that good stuff. So like when she posted about Cardano, I was just like, fuck. If Alison is posting about it, it's not good, right? So anyway, again, Alison really needs no introduction, but Alison, yes, just, in case we have any new people, just share a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm based in Philadelphia and I'm an independent researcher. I kind of frame myself as like a scrappy mom against AI and like Zakia like fell into a lot of this through things that we saw were wrong with the educational system that were just not right. And then through that realized so much wasn't right. And it was, my awareness around all of these systems being highly racialized and these systems of domination, like going back, centuries, that how it comes forward. So schools were my entry point, but my background is in art history and historic preservation and landscapes. And so really what I do a lot is I do research and I just sort of tug strings and you see this connects to this, connects to this. And if you look at these systems of power, if you understand it as, I've been having some great conversations with Stephen Newcomb, who is Shawnee Lenape and has spent 30 years of his life studying the papal bulls, this doctrine of domination in which the Christendom sort of said, well, you can just go out and if it's the pagans, the heathens, you can take them, take their stuff, take their land, take their minerals. And of course, that had huge repercussions both for Africa and for Turtle Island, for the original people of North and South America and the Caribbean. So all of these forces are in play. And so when you start to tug at these threads and you look at the way the narratives are being framed, and then you think, well, who in this equation actually holds the power, right? And what are these systems of how power has been used historically, and how does that resonate with juxtapose against how they're selling it to how it might actually manifest, right? And so especially given how the last year has been in terms of further concentration of wealth and power, especially in the tech sector and in the debt finance sector and like defense contracting and big pharma. So when I saw that, this largest mass rollout of digital identity on blockchain was happening in Ethiopia, this was about 3 weeks or so ago, I had some time about a week ago to start seeing what these connections were. And I have a lot of concerns. My focus around the blockchain space is less on the currency, like crypto, in terms of understanding it as monetary wealth, and more what is going to be coming with embedded sensor networks and smart environments in the ways in which people's basic human rights are going to start to be mediated through contracts, really contracting systems. And these contracting systems are tied into ledgers, which are the newest manifestation of accounting ledgers, which is what really ran the transatlantic trafficking of Africans, right, to the New World. That ran on accounting. It was the accountants that made that happen. It was the double entry bookkeeping. And so this next iteration of the ledger is going to be blockchain, and it's framed as sort of this, decentralized, cryptographic, tool of the masses. But I have a lot of questions about this, knowing the history of how accountancies and how all of these big accounting firms are connected, KPMG, Deloitte, Accenture, in the blockchain space and in debt securitization. So it's much more than just crypto. So yeah, so I started.
Let's get into it. Yeah, I mean,
Ethiopia.
This is what we have to talk about. And as a Pan-Africanist, I clearly care about Africans, Black people the world over in the diaspora. So not just here in America, but clearly, if this is happening in Ethiopia, that piqued my interest. This is something I wanted to talk about specifically on this channel, because we do have so many people who I also identify as Pan-African who listen to this channel and are both interested in sort of the crypto space too, but also well, if this ain't really about what I think it's about, then maybe I have some questions too. So that all of that is I'm really looking forward to your presentation. So.
Right. And my framing is that I trust that when people have, and I'm not saying I have all the information, but I think I have information that isn't necessarily the information that is the most commonly shared. And so I'm not going to tell people how to think, but I'm going to give them fill out the picture, and then I'll trust people to decide to make their own choices about what this means. But my background is especially in looking at human capital finance and how this is tied into these sensor technologies. So, we know that ID 2020 that has been, was leading with, biometric digital identities that are now being tied into medical status, and then is going to interface very likely with these central bank digital currencies and benefit systems. That was my framework of looking at blockchain digital identity maybe 3 or 4 years ago, right? So pandemic, pre whatever we've been going through the last year and plus. So this new digital identity system, and that has been pursued by the World Wide Web Consortium, the W3C Consortium, for a number of years, and they frame it as self-sovereign digital identity, right? And it's sort of like problem solution. They will say, you don't want to own, have Facebook own your data, have Google own your data. You'll have a digital identity and you will own and manage all of your data. But the reality is that in the future, these digital identities will demand access to certain levels of data, even if it is perhaps secured or anonymized in some way. You will have to be able to demonstrate, as we've been seeing with the travel passports or access to concerts.
That is nuts. The travel passports. We got to do one on that because, oh my God.
Well, it's about digital identity. So what they need to match your biometrics, your unique identifier. So if we understand what is happening now is that humans are being put into the supply chain in these global impact markets that I've talked about previously. Okay, so and in order to be tracked in the global processing, imagine the masses of humanity being like industry bred poultry, right? In battery cages and then shipped to China to be processed and then shipped back, and all of this shipping, the digital identity number is the unique identifier for this to all happen, and that these will be bets placed on your identity. So what's important to know about Cardano is that while this initial anchor point is in Ethiopia, they have their sights set on all of Africa. Their program is all of Africa. And so they have, a handful of other countries that they're looking at developing different proofs of concept around mobile telephone and rental arrangements and some other things. But this one is going to be about education. And so the software platform that they've got, it's called Atala Prism. So that is their digital identity space. Most people probably know them in the crypto space. I believe it's the ADA coin or whatever. So
yeah, ADA, yep.
Right. So the next piece of this is the digital identity that's going to be linked to their.
You probably already know this, but one of the founders of Ethereum founded Cardano.
Yes. Yeah, there was some falling out. And so he created his own. And what's important to understand is that Cardano, in addition to the coin and the digital identity, has, and I'll show the image with the name, but a smart contract system, which is what was central to Ethereum, was these smart contracts, which will mediate your engagement with people and the physical environment moving forward. So things that will be tokenized won't simply be like currency. It will be, a continuous game of Mother May I, right? And do you have that token? If you have the token, then you may, right? And that getting that token may be awarded based on compliant behavior.
We thought we were controlled before, huh?
This is because everything becomes more and more atomized, smaller and smaller, more and more fragmented. I mean, this whole economy is built on data and then fracking. I sort of talk about like fracking people for data. So I think it's useful to know that Ethiopia was actually piloting biometric identity systems with the United Nations a number of years ago, pre-Cardano. Okay, so they were already doing biometric identity for refugee populations, and especially tied to the World Food Program. Okay, so you can see the arrow over here with the World Food Program. So we know that the most, one of the most powerful ways of controlling societies is through the food, right? I mean, we've seen that in Ethiopia, Yemen, the indigenous tribe. If you control the food system, you can cut off the food supply. That is tremendous, tremendous power. So the integration of digital identity with quote unquote humanitarian aid and the food programming is really important to note, that there is a precedent pre-Cardano of a mentality within Ethiopia to sort of pursue this type of project. Okay, so now I'm going to play this video. I pulled this. There was a Hoskinson did like a 3-hour program with the rollout of this project, not just in Ethiopia, but for all of Africa. And so I pulled out a 2-minute clip that I think for me frames the conversation around who's really in charge of this program. And it's important to know Hoskinson comes out of Colorado, which is one of the key states pursuing blockchain in the United States. And I think it sort of sets the tone of where my mindset was. So I'm just going to hit play on this.
The flagship of which is a deal that we have closed with the Ministry of Education containing 5 million students using a technology called Prism integrated in the Cardano blockchain. Every one of these students will have a digital ID called a DID, and that DID carries with it metadata that will travel with them throughout their entire academic life. And like those who left Facebook's clutches of the university into the real world, will actually follow them into the economic world. So as they graduate, as they go into the economy, eventually this infrastructure can be used for property, for payments, for voting, and all other manners of their economic life. And what's beautiful about this evergreen deal is it's extensible. Our priorities and goals are directly aligned with the vision and priorities and goals of the Ethiopian government. In a recently published doctrine of Ethiopia 2025, there was a bold vision to digitize the country on 4 pillars, the first of which was a national ID system. It is our belief that the work we have done here with Prism and Cardano for these 5 million students will inevitably grow to be an inspiration and perhaps the system for 107 million Ethiopians, allowing them for the first time to globalize on equal terms with the United States, the European Union, China, and other modern developed economies. In addition to this system goes far beyond just identity. Our belief is that it can be used to help people procure jobs, to help people prove their skills, because the system can verify credentials, the system can verify certificates, the system can be used for a litany of activities which are required for people to understand who are credible actors to deal with and who have earned the right to have a job. The flagship of which is...
Okay, so Zakia, I'm curious if you'd perhaps seen this clip before, if you have any impressions about what he just said.
I have not seen this clip before. I don't know much about, I mean, I know he's like the one that was with Ethereum, but like, I hadn't heard this clip before, because this is like talking about something very specific. And most of the people that I know that talk about Cardano are only concerned about like how much money they can make.
Right. Well, so, I mean, you and I are both coming out of the education space, right?
Right.
We know, if people have seen, my child is now in college a couple years, but even the past 5-year trajectory, the amount of time and sort of the tentacles of technology in the classroom is so huge. And when I first started this, I thought, oh, this is about, well, a couple things. Like I thought, well, this is about selling computers and software and cloud computing, storage, blah, blah, blah. That's a moneymaker. So that sucks money out away from your kids and your local economy and sends it up to Google. And then it's also kind of about surveillance, because when you're doing all of this stuff online, that feeds into data profiling. So there's a surveillance piece. But what I was not imagining until much later was that this was going to feed these human capital markets. And what I've said, in quite a number of interviews, that the key piece that they need for this is they need the digital identity. They need the interoperable data system to essentially pre-crime people, to frame people as a future debt burden, and then fix them preemptively with their technology. And it's all a game, it's all a fiction, but they profile someone into a deficit model, whether that is, around their cognitive ability, around their mental health, around their physical health, around their employment, behavioral analytics, all of that they profile based on data analytics. So eventually it'll be linked to your family and even your genomics. And then they say they're going to fix you before you've even done anything, right? You can't even get out of it, because you can't say, well, I never was depressed, or I never was anxious, or I never had ADHD. They'll say, well, all the data says you're at risk, right? You're at risk of this. And so in order for us to be equitable about it, we need to fix you. And we have this great technological solution that's going to give us data so that the investors in these systems, will be able to make out. And what he's saying here is that the metadata, so the metadata isn't something as you took the standardized test at the end of the year and you got this score, that's a concrete thing. The metadata is all this tiny, like ephemeral data that goes along with it. Like if you have a tablet in a room, in a classroom, the metadata might be, what online object did you access on that tablet? What was your gaze? How long did you spend in that room with you? Was that a veteran teacher or a new teacher? Are you in a room with a certain percentage of kids who are English language learners or who are low income? All of that is layered in as metadata. And what he's saying is that starting, we know the goal is prenatal, but at least as far as preschool, that is going to aggregate to your digital identity and shape you as a commodity. And at the end, he said, we will know if it is aligned with the government. The goal is to take this program and apply it to the entire population of Ethiopia. And that is the e-government that I've talked about. Like you become a commodity of the state. Your relationship to the state is as a data commodity. And they'll know who are the credible actors. Those last few seconds, we will know who are credible and we will know who is worthy to have a job. That was his last sentence. We will know who is worthy to get a job. So if you understand that what is advancing is a world that Davos imagined, where much of the labor is going to be automated, much of it is going to be remote work, either on a screen or through a haptic robotic controllers, there's not going to be very many people who are actually getting jobs. And they're going to use the metadata starting in pre-K to decide if you're one of those very few people who can qualify. And ultimately, it's going to be like an AI that will make that decision. So
this is sick. This is some sick shit. And deserve a job. They're already doing that shit in other ways.
Yes, but this is more and more automated. And like I said, this is the guy who is rolling it out. He is based in Colorado. This is not originating in Ethiopia. This is not originating in Africa. This is originating in the heart of empire, really. This is the next wave of colonization. This is digital colonization.
Why is the Ethiopian government going along with this shit? Are they being paid?
Well, I have some more, so I'll keep going. All
right, yeah, let's keep going. This is crazy.
Okay, so here we go. There's an image here. I'll just read it. It's a little blurry, but this is from 2018 in Kigali in Rwanda. It is the Africa Summit, 2018 Africa Summit, Accelerating Africa's Single Digital Market. Okay. So when everyone's talking about blockchain and decentralization, right, and how liberating it is, why is this guy Hoskinson at a thing where they're talking about a single digital market? Does that feel decentralized? That doesn't feel terribly decentralized to me, is essentially if what they're talking about is creating an EU of Africa for the digital environment, right? So their site are on the entire continent of Africa. He describes himself in his LinkedIn as an entrepreneur, a mathematician, and a cryptocurrency evangelist, right? And he originated with Ethereum, and then they had a falling out, and he set up his own company. But on his LinkedIn, I figured he was in Boulder, Colorado, but the LinkedIn profile actually says Guffey, Colorado. So I'm like, well, where is Guffey, Colorado? Because where is Guffey? Well, okay, it's a couple hours on the other side of the mountain from Colorado Springs. But there's a whole heck of a lot of Air Force military power in Colorado Springs. There's a lot going on in Colorado.
Yeah, my nephew was there. He's in the Army. Yep.
And Cheyenne Mountain. Okay, so Cheyenne Mountain Complex is NORAD, right? So it's the Air Force. And once you understand that the spatial web, all of the sensor networks are essentially, and the crypto is running on the telecom infrastructure. It's running on the sensor networks, which are satellite based. Okay, it's running things on the ground, but it's geolocation data, and it's running off of these satellite constellations. And all of that stuff is the whole, the space program, the satellite programs, that's coming through the Air Force and NASA, but it's combined. And, this command control center, I would say, let's look at this, right? So we have Hoskinson, he's running this deal in Ethiopia. He's based in this remote area of Colorado, which is a central advancing efforts in blockchain. It is not too distant as Western standards go. Why is he in Guffey? Not too far from Cheyenne Mountain Complex there. So this is the young man who's in charge of the Africa Project, and his name is John O'Connor. Now, I will note it's kind of small here, but he got he just has a bachelor's, which, no shade on that, but this is someone who's relatively young. He finished his undergraduate in 2013. Okay, so he's just not even 10 years out of college, right? And he's going to roll out this whole program over the entire continent of Africa. He's coming out of Oxford, and his background is an investment analyst, right? And really he's just recently with the Cardano Foundation. I mean, I guess the whole thing is relatively new, but 2017. Okay, so does this look like a guy that is homegrown from Ethiopia? No. So again, who are these people? It's Hoskinson and it's O'Connor. So I think it's really vital, and this is something I keep saying within the blockchain space, is there's a material aspect to blockchain that has really profound environmental and human consequences. And so the e-waste and the electronics of all of this the sensor networks and the power of the data centers and the cryptography until they come up with some better solution. And I hear some are slightly better than others. There are huge impacts for Africa, specifically like for the cobalt and in Congo and the child miners. So if we understand that what's coming with this digital identity is the next wave of mining, but that the mining of the human is also linked to the mining of the earth. And Africa is so rich with mineral resources, and has been, and I feel very strongly that a lot of what has been going on with AFRICOM is about securing access to those minerals that they need to build the virtual world that they're building.
Of course.
Okay. So I think that context, I find is really important in situating it. So, so this is a map that I created. I make these maps with little sis, and Cardano has a couple of pieces at work. So there's, the foundation. So they have a foundation which is actually based in Switzerland, right? So Hoskinson's in Colorado. The foundation that's advancing adoption of Cardano is based in Switzerland. So it's the Cardano Foundation.
Is there a reason for that? Why it's not based in the United States?
Well, I mean, Switzerland is the center for blockchain. Like Zug is the Crypto Valley. So it, and I think it's really about secret banking. That's what Switzerland's about. It's about, that and CERN and some other things, but
isn't the United Nations stuff in Switzerland?
Yeah,
what kind of shit is this?
Yeah, no, it's all there. Like, it's not just chocolate and pastries. It's a lot. It's CERN. It's the United Nations. It's the Zug Crypto Valley. Yeah, it's a fortified nation. It's a very fortified nation with all of their mountains, right? So they've got that all going on. So they are working with their R&D, their software development arm is called IOHK, Input Output Hong Kong. Okay, so then this piece of the puzzle is in Hong Kong. And so when I'm talking about this, like if we understand like the geography of it, in a cloud-based world, this stuff is spread out all over. Right. So you've got a guy in remote Colorado. His foundation is in Switzerland. The tech support is running out of Hong Kong, but then they have two additional labs, blockchain labs. One is in Scotland, which is at the University of Edinburgh, which is interesting because Edinburgh is actually one of the oldest Masonic lodges, like the Scottish Rite Lodge of Freemasonry is in Edinburgh. And they've got a lot of AI stuff going on and disruptive innovation. The other lab that they have going on is at the University of Wyoming. Okay, so they're also doing blockchain development. So it's a very diffuse network. And so when you say, a lot of this isn't in Ethiopia, right? Like they have their sights on Africa as the acquisition point, but the background, like both the money that's advancing the program and the research is not specifically being, some of it is being carried out in Africa, but a lot of it isn't. So it's spread out. So this is sort of the overall structure, right? So let me just click over to the next slide. Okay, so this is simply just this is from April 27th, 2021. So, relatively recently, the last 3 weeks, they're announcing that they're putting 5 million, not just anybody, they're specifically targeting students and teachers for this project, for the Cardano, the Atala Prism digital identity product. So, I want to point out again that IOHK was called Inputs Outputs Hong Kong. Now that's impact investing. That is treating humans as, it's this technocratic framework, right? What are we putting in? What are we getting out? We're not going to, provide for people unless we have some guaranteed return. So there's a program coming online now called the Learning Economy. And I've spoken in the past about these pathways, the idea of putting people on lifelong learning pathways where they're collecting skill badges so that the AI can slot them into these gig jobs. And that the training and the education system for this is going to be linked into these global human capital investment markets. Okay, so there's something called the learning economy that's coming online. It has connections to the United Nations, and this is from their space, and they're talking about quantifying outcomes. It says by measuring the value chain of education. Okay, so they're talking about education as a value chain. Now, again, think back to what Hoskinson is saying about the metadata of these children and being accruing to them and deciding if they're allowed to get a job. Okay, if they're a good actor in the eyes of the government. Measuring the value chain of education, we can stand up a 22nd century ready learning ecosystem that quantifies impact. So that's the human capital markets and lets us solve many of our toughest challenges. Okay, whatever, they're not solving the problems. If they solve the problems, their market would go away. And this is a little animation. It doesn't move here, but in this, behind the laptop is this little yellow package, like an Amazon warehouse, and the package is like plopping in the hole. And so the animation is like the education is coming out of the computer and just plopping in the hole. Like that's how they're imagining this educational model. So this is what learning economy is framed as, a steward of the internet of education, right? And the internet of education is about essentially constraining people's options so that they are fit into the fourth industrial revolution and that they will build the spatial web, that they will build this virtualized world that is being put in place, and understanding that this is a militarized world. And this is an article that was in the BBC in February of 2020, right? So a month before everybody went in lockdown. And this is talking specifically about learning economy. And they're saying, is education the new currency? Is education the new currency? So that's where the arrow is. And it says, if we could quantify the value of each educational opportunity, can that data map a pathway for building skills? So it's skill acquisition, pathways, betting on compliance, and human capital. So what's interesting about this, again, this is a BBC article. So remember, John Connor, he's based, I think he grew up, he says he spent time growing up in Ethiopia, but his education is Oxford. Hoskinson is in Colorado. Well, guess where one of the early pilot labs for this learning economy is? It's actually in Colorado in 2020, right? Broward County, Miami, I think is another one of them, but there's not many. There's a handful of pilots. Colorado just happens to be the learning economy pilot. And Colorado is a leader in both workforce aligned education, digital identity, and blockchain education. And they're pursuing blockchain technology now. This is a 2019 briefing for their state government. So, people are not imagining that the tokenization is going to apply to people, right? Is going to apply to people being in this educational panopticon of their metadata, being evaluated as whether or not you guys are good actors and worthy of getting a job. And that the people who are making the money on that are the people who are betting on your behavioral compliance within the education, training, lifelong learning system. It's not the people themselves, because they're just going to be competing against each other on blockchain with AI gig work. The people in Ethiopia will be competing against the people in the Philippines, against the people in Newfoundland or wherever, to try to get little piecework to build the militarized virtual world that's coming. Does that make sense so far, Zakia? Are you following me?
It's great. Wonderful. This is ridiculous.
I know, right? But you have to follow the geography of it. So
God.
The other piece of this that's important to know, so this is another piece of my map. So you see input, output, Hong Kong, is that I was doing work earlier, and the people who want to build the virtual world so that capitalism can keep expanding and turn us all into avatars in their video game, those in power are expecting that the youth of Africa and India will code this thing. That is the
I was just going to ask about that, because you said their goal is to be all over Africa, and I'm like, for what? That
human capital is intended to both code it and then to be lifted up as a data analytic in terms of equity and opportunity gaps and all of these other things on the Sustainable Development Goals for impact markets, right? So they'll allow people to move slightly out of impoverished circumstances, like maybe move slightly out of their World Bank, IMF imposed structural adjustment if their children are chained to building, chasing skills and cleaning up data for the drones and the autonomous vehicles and stuff. Like, this is not glamorous coding work that they're planning for these kids. This is piecemeal grunt work. This is not, a lot of times they'll sell STEM as sort of a glamorous white collar job. This is not that. This is probably little children on phones, coding checking yes or no boxes or something like that. Or even, like, I'll show you later, but using gestural coding in virtual reality to code this.
Because they don't know how to read.
Yeah, they're not going to let them know how to read. It's going right back to where it was. And so part of it is controlling the education system, which has happened for a long time. And Bridges International Academies, which is backed by Gates and Omidyar and Mark Zuckerberg, has made a lot of inroads in Africa, Liberia and Kenya. I know, I think they've been pushed out because they're very predatory. It's a subscription model, and they call these low-cost private schools. So the families, it's like, $1 a day, or I don't know, maybe $1 a month. It's relatively low cost, but these tablet-based instructions, the teachers are just told what to say on the tablets, and all of the instruction is coming out of Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's coming out of the war machine. So they tell the teachers what to teach the kids. And that is imperialism, because essentially most of this effort, they have been trying to do this one laptop, one child program that was coming out of MIT Media Lab. That's Nicholas Negroponte. And he had the one laptop, one child effort in 2005, and it didn't really take off. And now they're moving towards something called the 1billion.org with tablet-based education. And they might not even get a tablet. They're just going to get a phone to do this work. And so the parents are going to scrabble around and try to scrape together money for these, school-based fees. A lot of these schools are going to be franchised through the global north. And then they're going to force these kids into doing the kind of work that they want done. And so my concern is that the school fee structure is going to be tied into the digital currency. And so just like I have a sense in the United States with that the education savings accounts, the vouchers that they're talking about, will end up being digital currency and tracked. Arizona has a debit card system, but that's going to go on an e-wallet. And, the Heritage Foundation has talked about that in the development aid space, that will be provided as some sort of a digital token to access these, low cost, relatively fee-based schools. And so within this larger context of managing education, Cardano is looking at Kenya, and there are efforts around social enterprise in East Africa. And it's very much focused on the interface of the telecom industry and the digital payment systems. So Kenya has M-Pesa and Safaricom, which is a relatively well-developed online payment system, like a phone-based payment system. But you can see where this arrow is. There's one here called Give Directly. So they're going to start channeling sort of global north social impact charity into these spaces with the digital payments. So maybe you'll start to have investors, these peoplenaires that I've talked about, who start backing, kids who show promise, right? Like in their coding programs, they're going to be grooming them, but that the impact space for tracking impact in education will be linked to these digital payments and these low-cost private schools. There's going to be some synergy in the digital currency space and the education school fee space. Because that's
crazy.
Mostly what's going on there. So I mean, just in terms of like the colonial aspect, right? So I think this was the education minister before the current one. Oh gosh, what is his name again? Shifra Telekmariam. And so he is going to the British Council. Okay, so the British Council is sort of, it's the colonies. I mean, it's the Queen's English. It is essentially using a structure that's tied in with the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, so the State Department, the Foreign Policy Office of the UK, to encourage adoption of English, right, as a primary language of the realm, and to also the broader base of English is the easier you can access in terms of influencing, people's mindsets about how you consider the empire, right? And so the British Council, they focus on English language learning and testing all over the world. They are connected to the UK Foreign and Commonwealth Office. There's this person, Dominic Register, who was linked in with the social impact, social emotional program, I think Karanga in Indonesia. And so there's a lot going on here with ed tech and impact investing. So the British Council is connected to something called Connecting Classrooms. And again, if you understand you can control a country, you can control their food, right? That's really important. But if you control the minds of the children, that's also hugely important. And you control the minds of the children by controlling their education system. And through cloud-based computing now, and even if it's not fully cloud-based computing, but they can upload digital education lessons even into devices that don't have immediate cloud-based access. If you can control the mindset through digital content, these folks play, 20, 30, 40 years down the line, right? So they're like, we're going to invest now to make sure we get all the kids of Africa and all the kids of India lined up with where we need their headspace to be about this new virtual world. And so the UK Department for International Development, which is sort of like USAID for Great Britain, they're very involved in ed tech, education data analytics tied to the World Bank. So there's something called the Systems Approach for Better Education Results, or SABER, and that's a World Bank program. So that feeds into the UK DFID. They have an educational technology hub. They have a knowledge, evidence, and learning for development program. So the evidence is the data for the human capital impact markets. You've got the connected classrooms, which is, again, the feeder line between empire and the colonies and getting that information into the children's brains. And then you've got a global education data portal, because, again, it's all going to be framed as equity, right? They're going to have everybody compete against everybody else for the data analytics. And then ultimately, this is all being financed through global finance systems. This is the International Finance Facility for Education. So, most people don't really think of ed tech as this big business market, but it is. It's tied in with a much larger colonial construct, and Ethiopia is in that mix. Isn't definitely in that mix. So this is what images that I had mentioned. The first iteration was this inexpensive, durable laptop, one laptop per child. But again, it's coming out of MIT Media Lab. This started in 2002. Nicholas Negroponte, his brother John Negroponte, was essentially involved in overthrowing governments all over the world, right? And he went back to advising in Vietnam. So this is a very powerful family here. And again, this is not simply a benevolent act to put laptops in the hands of all the impoverished children in the global South here. The more stripped down version here is we're seeing something called One Tab, and it's connected to this 1 billion. So imagine, again, a mining project. This is their mining infrastructure. And One Tab is actually being pushed in Oakland, California. So One Tab is coming out of the United Kingdom, but they're actually pushing it in Oakland too right now.
Wait, they're pushing this in Oakland too?
They are pushing the One Tab. So this One Tab solution, a tablet-based learning solution in Oakland.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and the NAACP office there is pushing it too. It's tough. Yeah.
Wait, the Oakland NAACP is pushing it?
Yeah.
Oh.
I know, right? So people need to kind of get up to speed on what this is really about. So again, when we're talking about, it's not just the UK development aid. These tablets for Cardano are they're being funded by USAID. Okay, so the US government is buying the tablets and setting up all of the internet. Okay, because why? Because it is in their interest to have all of the children of Ethiopia on board with this larger program of the fourth industrial revolution, because they need them to code the prison planet. So again, this is Cardano's
the prison planet.
It's the prison planet.
You gotta unpack that. The prison planet. Damn.
It is a prison planet. I mean, they won't know till the door shuts behind you that it's not all fun and games, that it's the prison planet, but that's what it is. So, I mean, this is, you can tell a lot by their branding, right? So, does this evoke Hoskinson and O'Connor?
No, not at all. They know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing. And they're going after Black women. I mean, they're going after this sacred, feminine, earth, connected thing. But there's this overlay, right? And I think it's interesting. There's a number of images on the same web page where there's the real person, but then they're overlaid with these graphic, geometric graphical patterns. And this is sort of the augmentation, this augmented reality. So again, just hitting home that they're after the whole continent. In Tanzania, so this is the trick. I had a conversation with somebody earlier about blockchain. I said, I don't think, in my opinion, we should be blockchaining people, like especially if without full informed consent about what this means to be blockchained. And so, in Ethiopia, they're doing it through the education system. Well, in Tanzania, they're actually developing alternative remote mobile telephone, I don't have the technological construct, but it's using different sort of wavelengths that are less expensive to provide phone access in remote rural areas of Tanzania. Okay. But it's with World Mobile is the company. This is all running with the telecoms, because your money is going to be in your e-wallet on your phone. They're using people's telephone contracts to set up their own digital identity. Would you know really what it meant when they said, oh, here, just set up your new phone account. Here, smile for the camera and take your facial picture? Would you know that they set up a blockchain identity for you? I don't know that you would necessarily know that. You wouldn't think that it was going to come through your phone company. So they've got all of these little tricks they're trying out. Maybe we can, what's going to work, right? They have a lot of different options, and they're like, well, how do we get the most people on blockchain we can in ways that I think are not particularly forthright? I don't think the people, these 100,000 people who might be signing up to get phone service in remote Tanzania would necessarily know what it means to be part of the spatial web. I just don't think they do.
No.
I mean, the other thing is, so they're connected to Save the Children. Okay, so this is one of these large NGOs, and they're going to use digital currency for humanitarian aid. Well, Save the Children here is based actually in Portland, Oregon, which is interesting because Oregon is having one of the hardest lockdowns right now. And I'm just going to read aloud. So this goes back to 1932, this organization, okay, 1932. It is part of the World Benchmarking Alliance, which is for the Sustainable Development Goals. It's part of the Better Than Cash Alliance. So that's Gates, that's digital currency. It is part of the Ready Nation Global Business Summit on Early Childhood. That was Heckman, who had a gathering in New York City for people all over the globe to invest in early childhood. But if you were someone who cared about, was an advocate for children, you could only come with pre-approved business partners. That was in New York in 2018. Okay. They're working with Cardano. They are the connection to Strive Together. And we know that Strive Together is the spin out of KnowledgeWorks in Ohio, which is the human capital pipeline, they call it cradle to career pipeline. So that's interfaced with the United Way and, the Ballmer Group and Goldman Sachs and all of those. They're also working with something called DNet, which is in Bangladesh, which is also another big blockchain testbed. And this maternal and child survival program, which again, these impact markets are not just early childhood and pre-K, they go all the way back to prenatal care. So again, tracking compliance. We had that conversation on the Momnibus bill about controlling reproductive health, and BitGive. So that's blockchain for global philanthropy. And again, it's on blockchain because they're tracking the impact. None of this is no strings attached. I mean, it might not be necessarily they know you exactly use the money in this way, but through the back end, which is what, when MIT put in the Enigma protocol, that they can inquiry on the encrypted data for the impact markets. So, this Save the Children. And I will say recently, as of like a year or two ago, they had people looking into, there were issues around sexual impropriety in this organization. And you can look at that.
And which organization?
This is Save the Children.
Save the Children, yeah.
So Cardano is working with them, and they're based in Oregon. So, I've spoken in the past some about the global impact market. So what does, this next generation of education look like? So UNICEF is really big in this space. UNICEF Innovation Fund is all over Africa and India now, and they want to push virtual reality. Okay. So again, this is mining infrastructure. The things on those people's faces, they have no sense that they're even with other people, really. They're in their own world, literally in these headsets, and their ears are covered. They are captured. They're really literally captured by this technology. Okay. All of this is to collect data, biometric data on the back end for the impact markets. And then again, moving towards virtualizing people to get people normalized to living in these virtual environments. So we did a revocation of consent at the Council on Foreign Relations. This is, my friend Raul raised it yesterday. He's like, it's the 100th year of the Council on Foreign Relations. They are very deeply in the education space. And this issue from 2016 of Foreign Affairs called the Innovative Finance Revolution, Private Capital for Public Good, which, look, you can see the keyhole. Like, they are about to channel all this ESG investing to the Sustainable Development Goals, but it's all going to be running on data surveillance, particularly data surveillance of targeted populations, Black and brown populations. And so education is a central feature. And I find this image of UNICEF Innovation Fund pretty upsetting. So this is an image, I don't know how well it's going to turn out on the Council on Foreign Relations, but I had done this to get some background before we did our event in New York. They have something called the Center for Universal Education, and they are working on the impact bond space. So impact bonds in developing countries, early learning from the field. So the Council on Foreign Relations is specifically focused on impact bonds in education. That issue of foreign relations was partnered with the Rockefeller Foundation. So again, Rockefeller Foundation and Judith Rodin set up the Global Impact Investment Network, which is the human capital bond program. One of the chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations at the time, David Rubenstein, he's with the Carlyle Group. And I'm going to have to zoom in a little bit here just so I can, remind myself. He's with the Carlyle Group. The Carlyle Group has sponsored events on the legal issues around social entrepreneurship, and they're working in the edtech space. He's also the vice chair of the board of the Brookings Institution, also involved in social impact bonds around education and early childhood. He was on the board of the Hoover Institution, also working on education policy and governance with Harvard. He was a member of the Board of Trustees at the University of Chicago, which is where Jim Heckman is, who developed the early childhood pre-K equation, right? So the chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations that has created this Center for Universal Education is a key figure. The Council on Foreign Relations is also advising on a global scholars diploma, right? Because again, the scholars, like what kind of scholars are we actually going to have? Their goal is to get children to compete for these digital badges because they're never going to be done learning. They're always going to be chasing the badges. But this is actually Ohio State, Zakia, is one of the partners in this. Harvard, University of Oregon, and Ohio State. Along with
I'm not surprised.
Which is
State,
and P&G. So, and Rubenstein is connected to the Trilateral Commission. One of the other board of directors of Council on Foreign Relations is Lawrence Fink, who was CEO of BlackRock, who is essentially now running the Federal Reserve and involved in doing ESG consulting for the EU. So very much deeply embedded in the social impact space and stakeholder capitalism. And then we've got like Tim Geithner in here too. So I just want to say, like, this is a huge, huge market that goes back to larger global geopolitics, right? This didn't just happen in Ethiopia. It happened there for a reason. And it's because the forces that are in our country that are manifesting both in Colorado and in New York and Washington are putting this infrastructure in place to have this mining project go forward. So this is taken from a Unicef presentation, the Unicef Innovation Fund, about virtual reality. And I believe that this was maybe in Nigeria. And this is how they described it. They said, continuing to employ traditional means will lead to the same results. There will never be enough money allocated in the budget, qualified teachers, or places in schools for the population we have. I mean, just listen to that. They're saying they're never going to give money to kids in Nigeria to have school. So emerging technologies like virtual reality will let us leapfrog problems like needing a teacher and offer the hope of more affordable, scalable, better quality education. That is how UNICEF talks about educating the children of Africa.
I'm not surprised. Africans have always been, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the other thing is, this is in 2017, the Ministry of Education partnered with Eon Reality, which is described as the world leader in virtual reality-based knowledge transfer for industry and education, based out of Irvine, California. So the education these people are going to be getting, these children are going to be getting, is probably virtual reality. And again, it's California and Ethiopia. This is not an internal, continental, Pan-Africanist effort. This is a colonizing effort, okay?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
The Innovation Fund is based out of Singularity University. And their major funder is Disney, actually, Zakia. Like, the major funder of the UNICEF Innovation Fund is Disney. Okay. Singularity University is.
We know their history, racist ass history.
Yeah.
Disney, yeah.
And so Singularity University is in Santa Clara County, California. So it's in Silicon Valley. It's right there in Silicon Valley. It's interesting because it's also next to this Pope John Paul II statue, which I don't know what exactly is going on there, but that's where Singularity University is. So the people in this building are making decisions about how that there will never be enough money to actually educate the children of Africa with schools, real schools, and real human teachers, that they will be educated through a virtual reality headset. This is just a map that I have that shows the Singularity University. Now, the other piece of this, and I'll get into this a little bit later, but Ben Gertzel, who is connected to Hanson Robotics and developing humanoid robots, is an advisor to Singularity University. Okay, so Ben Gertzel is in this mix, okay, with Singularity. And UNICEF Innovation Fund is focused on wearable technology, and they have virtual reality education programs in Chile, in India, in Nigeria. They're also working on apps for refugee children in Syria with this NYU group out of, and New York University, right? And then the Amply Pre-K app is actually coming through them through Trust Lab. So they're doing a lot of sort of, again, blockchain colonization of the bodies and the minds of the children moving forward. I'll just read aloud what Unicef Ventures is about. This is this venture capital fund tied to UNICEF, which again is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It says they explore technologies such as blockchain with the potential to impact children and young people globally, to provide them with information, opportunity, and choice. And the team sees blockchain technology as having benefits in 3 ways. The first one, right? Leveraging innovative financing models. that's what the Council on Foreign Relations is about, right? Leveraging innovative financing models, that's pay for success, human capital finance, increasing efficiency and transparency. So that's straight up Taylorism right there. And then incentivizing and encouraging the creation of open source public goods. So that means essentially they don't have to pay for the actual stuff. They can data mine the kids with minimal. And then the incentivizing part, that's, yeah. So that's pretty deep, I think. And the web, this web. So again, I just want to touch on, this is an image that I had used. It's from JCA Solutions, which is a defense contractor in Orlando, Florida. They had talked about that simulations, virtual reality simulations, were much cheaper even than online learning classes, and that they could also get biometric data out of the VR headsets and the haptic controllers. And so when you picture the room of those young people or young adults in the headsets and the audio visuals, most people, unless you're working in this space, aren't thinking like, oh, I can, they're tracking where my eyes are looking. They're tracking, there's probably like electrodermal stuff. Like they're tracking my arousal with the information. They're tracking my heart rate. They're tracking my emotions. They're tracking whether or not I completed the task I was supposed to do in this virtualized simulation. And in this case, it was teaching a student to pet a dog properly. That was their scenario. And
Wait,
then if they yeah, so it was an example, but they would have competency-based education or even project-based, because that's what's going to come next. They're going to say, hey, don't we all love projects? Let's do some projects now. But make sure
they're already doing that. That's a big one from Chan Zuckerberg. I'm surprised you don't know that. The whole project-based shit.
No, I know. But see, they're not saying like, by the way, your project is going to be in a VR headset. They're not telling parents that. Like,
no, they definitely ain't saying
that.
The
project is like when I make a paper mache penguin, no, it's not that kind of project anymore. Like, well, maybe if you would make a paper mache penguin in virtual reality, right? And then if all of that data would feed these impact markets. And then,
so is that NFTs? Are you familiar with the NFTs, the non-fungible tokens?
Yeah. So you'll earn the token, you'll get the credit, it'll check the box, that's the competency or the proficiency or the mastery. And they'll say, okay, well, you pet the dog. You pet the dog the way we wanted you to pet the dog. You've gone through these 10 steps. You've met the rubric. Now you get the badge that says I can pet a dog properly, and then click move on to the next task, right? But they need the kids to be in the virtual reality space to get all of that data. And then it won't be pet a dog. It'll be something else. Here's how to clean up training data for an autonomous vehicle. So have you cleaned up all the photographs so the car doesn't run into the tree, and then you get a badge for that. And then the AI can tell you that you can do work. You can do that job, or you can compete for that job. You probably won't get it because there's 500 people already also competing for the job, but you can try, right? And we'll track how much you try, because that'll be part of our, welfare reform that, Biden is going to roll out, or, with your UBI. But this is kind of how this thing goes. And, I just want to pair it with this image, because this is one of the virtual reality marketing programs. It's called Nubian VR. In Africa. And again, they're going after the girls specifically, like this branding. And it's highly symbolic that like she's in this sun, but you would never know because her face it's covered up, and she's got this infinity symbol on her headband. It's a pretty, to me, it feels like a pretty symbolic and sort of dark arts kind of thing going on with this imagery. And again, people are not understanding that the virtual reality space, this is coming out of defense simulation technology. All of this is stuff that the military has used for a very long time to train soldiers in simulations for military engagements. And now it's being used on children to train them to work in an Amazon warehouse. So
you silly Alison.
You can raid a compound, or you could sell a grill at Walmart. I mean,
you just say it so nonchalantly and shit, like just train them to work at an Amazon warehouse.
No, I'm not kidding, because I have that picture. It's coming up. But this is even the scary. So part of this is they want, like, these deals are about measurable behavior change, and they want to track your emotion, right? But what's really creepy is that they really want to brainwash you and children. So here's one where they're talking about virtual reality as an empathy machine, right?
Wow.
So if you understand that it's like the alien thing stuck on your face, like that they want to mine you. This is a vampiric kind of thing. This machine wants to be human. It wants to try to be human. It's sucking
We're teaching it
human out of it. Yes, that's exactly what it is.
It's called machine learning. That's what the ARK investments call it. And they're like pumping it.
Well, this is Sophia. So the thing is, Cardano is teamed up with Hanson Robotics, Ben Goertzel, and Singularity.net. So they've built this Sophia the robot, right? In Ethiopia, over her brain. It's hanging out the back of her head. And here she's saying, empathy will set us free. I hope to help teach empathy skills someday once I have developed a true understanding of what it means. Well, how do they know? Because you put a VR headset on and then they showed you pictures of what it's like to be in a refugee camp, and they trigger your trauma response, and then they map all of your biometrics, and then they feed that into the crazy robot lady.
That's why they focusing on Africans. I'm not trying to be funny. So they're going to put these VR headsets, hold on. They're going to put these VR headsets on a bunch of African children.
Yeah.
Because
Well, so the other thing is there's a paper that I spent a lot of time mapping it in Little Sis, and then they ripped it all out. But it was called Awakening the Consciousness in Children. And if you didn't understand or read between the lines, it would sound lovely. It was all social emotional learning and gender equity and all of this stuff. And it was
all that bullshit. Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. It's like the worldwide goodwill, or something like that. And it's with the Lucis Trust. And the Lucis Trust used to be the Lucifer Trust. And it came out of the Theosophical thing and this Alice Bailey.
Lucifer? That's a quick way to get Black people to go the other way.
I'm not telling you. They won't know. They won't know. So it's the World Goodwill, and they're with the United Nations and like all this crazy stuff about one world religion. Yeah, that's it. So they're talking about this awakening consciousness, and they're citing Alice Bailey in here, and they're citing this woman, I can't remember her name, is Diamond. She's a neuroscientist at University of British Columbia, and they're all talking about cognitive neuroscience and engineering people's emotions and caring about them. But the thing is, once you understand so blue light suppresses your melatonin, okay? And that's what's created by your pineal gland or whatever, which is like your sacredness. And so if you understand that by taking children,
call it the third eye.
Yes.
Pineal gland is the third eye.
Yes, exactly. And they're going to put those headsets on with the blue light and zap it out of you, those children. And then meanwhile, suck their.
That's why they focusing on Africa. This shit makes so much sense now. Oh my God.
I'm telling you, it's deep. I mean,
this shit makes so much more sense now.
Africa and India, both. And women, particularly girls, they, I mean, nothing against, but like specifically Black and brown girls is what that they're focused on.
Of course.
So again, this is just this app Rise. I used this slide last week on compulsory dyslexia screening. And everyone's like, well, we want to take care of dyslexia. Well, not with compulsory, because it's about putting you on apps. And here you've got MIT, and you've got Unicef, and you've got the World Bank. And guess what? All this stuff goes back to MIT again, and the War Machine, and the Gabrielli neuroscience people, and Curious Learning. And guess what? This is what Curious Learning thinks learning is in Africa. So again, you deconstruct this image, and you have a child in a natural world setting. And you're saying they're going to learn to read while they're out of school because, by the way, we're not going to ever fund their school. And then at this point, this kid doesn't even get a tablet. He gets a phone, and he's like 3 years old. And I'm sure that there's some return on investment, and he looks kind of excited. So they're probably getting his facial recognition and his like emotion stuff out of that too. And nobody's peeling it back. That's what I'm saying.
You peeling that shit back. It's some people, it's some believers in the chat now. Somebody was like, I knew it. somebody was like, I sold Cardano. I'm glad I did.
But so it's quality, right? Look, I mean, it is quality. You have the global goals, quality. That's quality. That's because they need the data for their human capital bonds. Okay. So again, sustainable quality, right? They're mining the children. They're mining the cobalt. They're mining. So, so this is from one of the other articles about Cardano, but it says that it will act as the heart of Smart Africa Alliance. Okay, so we know what SMART is, right? A joint effort of African nations and partners like the World Bank. Because the
World Bank is so concerned about Africa, let me tell you.
Yes, to bring them forward. And it was created to transform Africa using the power of technology. And it has 5 pillars: policy, access, e-government, entrepreneurship, and sustainable development. Well, we know, I mean, as I've said before, the e-government is about digital identity and framing you as this impact bond of debt, finance, weaponized social safety net of all countries. That's what e-government's about. And then mining the people for data that they can then throw off to their private partners to make value off of. And then the sustainable development is anything but, because all of this is running on stuff that is not at all sustainable, right? If your goal is to put that little boy in a phone in his hand, how long is that phone going to last on the top of a dirt hill, right? Like, then they throw it away and get another one. It's not none of this e-waste, the mining, they're talking about reclaiming the rare minerals from e-waste, which is one of the most toxic things you can do. And that's, people, especially also, I'm sure in Africa and in India, taking these things apart, they call it urban mining, because they just send all that stuff and then they make the poor people take it apart, right? And then they extract the value out of it that way. So it's not sustainable. And then at the bottom line here, that they're enabling, so decentralized is supposed to make all of this okay. Digital payments, which we know is going to be controlled. That's going to be controlling your public access. Smart contracts, that's the prison planet. Can you go outside today? What did your smart toilet say? What does your biosensor say, with the smart contract? And food traceability. So again, the World Food Program. The idea of GMO, people are getting the hang of this now, but they're putting vaccines in foods, they're 3D printing foods. They're saying that, they're going to fix your DuPont is working on microbiome engineering.
Oh my God.
They'll go sell you some sterile microgreens grown in a cargo container at Walmart, and then custom engineer your gut health, because again, it's gut brain health. And that's a big connection to, spectrum disorder, other kind of behavioral challenges with people who don't have good gut health. And that's because of food deserts and poisoning people with bad food. So, but they're going to, instead, they'll decide for you how they can engineer your gut to have the brain to do the thing they want you to do, which is a prison planet. Or you could sell.
That is the prison planet. There was a question up here. I don't know if you want to take it really quickly. There was a question up here from my friend Marika. She, Marika, she's doing the work in the Twin Cities around all this bullshit. And she asked, she's interested in your response on the recent proposal from the EU Commission on AI legal framework. She said, does any of this connect?
Well, so, I think a lot of it is that they want to talk about moral AI, right? Or even the Pope is oh, well, let's have these good standards for moral AI. And to me, it goes back to, do we want that world?
No.
To me, and I feel very strongly that the response to this present moment is grounded in indigenous relationships to culture and land and sacred practice, which is Africa, India, Turtle Island, that piece of it. And so that is why this colonization project is not simply, it's not just the racism, it's not just the extraction, but it's actually the full-on erasure of anything that would stand in the way of AI, right?
Damn.
And so part of it is that they want us to agree to they frame it so that they'll say, they give you a set of choices, but no matter what you choose, it still works out for them, right? Well, what kind of AI do you want? Do you want the immoral kind or the moral kind? And you're like, well, the moral kind, please. And you're like, no, we don't actually want the AI, so that's how they play it. And it's the same with GDPR in the EU. That was all about this data privacy. Well, yeah, I started figuring out about 2 years ago that this was setting up digital identity. They'll say, oh, well, you can be private. You can totally be private. You're the World Wide Web people. They're giving you your self-sovereign identity. We're not going to tell you MIT has the Enigma protocol on the back end so that they can make your child sit on a dirt pile with a phone and have a robot take care of your elderly parent, from another country. We're not going to tell you that part. And for me, once I found out that the Nazis ran the space program, and all this stuff was running from space, the whole prison planet run by Nazis, that makes a lot more sense. Oh, okay. This Starlink crap.
I don't think a lot of people knew that. I know I didn't know that Nazis was running the damn space by.
Early on in the 50s, and they were in Alabama. I did not even know that. They went to Alabama. They were in New Mexico first, and they went to northern Alabama. There's a bunch of Nazis.
Oh, yeah, there is a space station. It sure is. It's right outside of Huntsville.
Can you imagine all these Nazis in Alabama, small town Alabama?
Can I imagine? Absolutely. Yes, all over that motherfucker. Yes.
Well, I haven't been to Alabama yet, so you tell me.
I grew up there, so I know.
That's what I'm saying. I'm reading this book about astrophysics, and I'm like, Alabama? I had no idea. So, I'm going to run this little clip. This is just about.
Yes, let's do it.
This is John O'Connor.
I'll make it big, yeah.
These people are young. I mean, this guy's not even out of college 10 years, and he's going to run the blockchain of Africa, right? So if you understand this is about supply chain tracking, right? It's if you picture that the masses, the children coming up are the chickens in the industrial battery cages, right? Ready for the gassing and send to China to be cut up. It's the supply chain tracking. And so they need to get you on. So he's going to talk about supply chain and coffee beans. But what we need to understand is it's about much more than just coffee beans in Ethiopia. It's about tracking children. And that's exactly what Strive is about. It's the cradle to career. It's the pathway. The pathway is the supply chain processing.
At the risk of laboring this point a little bit more, I think that people often think about identity as a single product, whereas actually it spans across many different industries and many different solutions. So, to give you an example here, if you're going to be doing a supply chain track and trace solution, where you're going to try to prove the provenance of a good like coffee from the farmer to where it's sold maybe as a £6 espresso in London, and you're trying to make sure that you can transfer more value back to that farmer when that final sale is done. Well, how's that going to happen? Well, one is that you could have a smart contract which will enable automatic payment back to the farmer when the sale happens. But, who's that farmer? Well, you need an identity for that farmer. You also want to have an identity for all the people along that supply chain, the exporters, the roasters. So when we talk about identity, for me, it's enabling us to get into many, many different industries. So this is supply chain track and trace. This can be health records. This can be opening up loans and insurance. So this is the reason why I bang on about it, because once you get identity and you find product market fit on it, you're really opening yourself up to many multi-billion-dollar industries. At the risk of laboring this.
All right. So did any of that resonate, knowing what we know about human capital processing relating to coffee beans?
Oh my God.
So
these people, hold on, listen. These people continue to innovate their oppression. That's what I heard. Yeah. Innovation, right? But of oppression.
But see, I think most people would go, well, yeah, for sure the coffee farmer should get more money for sending a high-end coffee to London. Why would you be against this guy getting his money's worth? Because he's being ripped off already. They pick the scenario and they don't say, by the way, but then he did say health records, right? He did say,
well, that's because it's like, that's because people aren't like as aware as you are, and like as only a few people. Like, now once this shit really gets mainstream, these people gonna be way down the line and it's gonna be too late, right?
Yeah.
But of course he's saying some things like that, like, and I know because I know you, but he's saying it because nobody is thinking like, oh, that's some bullshit. People can no, seriously, people are listening to this like, oh, this is really good. Yeah, health records. We all want access to our health records, and it should be more efficient and innovative,
Yeah, I know. But what they're not saying is like, hey, you know what? You've got epigenetic trauma. We got to answer. DuPont can fix that.
They getting ready to do in black people.
And some bio-neutral pharmaceuticals. And some nice or engineered video games, and they'll fix you right up. They'll make you the perfect specimen of what we need to run the prison planet.
Oh, Lord.
I mean, and then someone who is invested in all those processes for you in your healthcare and your training, they'll get a nice return at the end when they sell you off at the London coffee shop. I mean,
y'all got to go. If y'all haven't watched, so for people who are new to this channel or like new to this conversation, please go back and watch my episodes 5, 7, and 10. She goes into detail about the human capital markets, because there are people probably on here like, now what the fuck is that? So go back and watch. I know they're long. They're like 2-3 hours. Usually Alison and I can't do anything under 2 hours. So you got to go back and really watch those. Trust me, like once you are watching them, if you're anything like me and like you're into information, you're going to be glued to everything she's saying too anyway. And it's like the time is going to really just go by. I tell people, like, if you exercise like me, like if you go out and walk in your neighborhood or jog or whatever it is, put that on in your AirPods or whatever you listen to, and just listen while you're doing it, or driving even. But you've got to go back and watch episodes 5, 7, and 10. But go ahead.
Well, thanks. I mean, it's kind of like learning a new language. I mean, it's and people are like, can you do it simpler? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, I can only do it the way I can do it. I'm trying to get better at it. But like once it starts to sink in, people are like, I have to listen to 20 hours of Alison, and then it starts to make sense. But like, can I say, like, once you start to get it, you see it everywhere, right? Like when you
that happened to me. I would be bugging you. Remember, I would always be inboxing you about shit. I'm like, oh my God, I see it everywhere now. Not necessarily about crypto, but it was about like the other stuff, all of that. Yeah.
The language, because once you know what they mean when they use these words, you can start, like, once you see the flip side of it, then you're like, oh, it's, this isn't about coffee beans. This is about like toddlers on surveillance play tables. So again, like, how far does this go back? In 2015. So, it's important to know that Ghebreyesus, he's Ethiopian, right? So the World Health Organization, all of the structure, it goes way back. And in 2015, which is when they adopted the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, they actually had a meeting in Addis Ababa to talk about the finance piece. Like, how are they going to actually finance this shift to the prison planet, AKA smart, green, sustainable development, whatever. And so at that event, there was the International Finance Facility for Education. So that goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the United Kingdom Development Finance Aid and the British Council and Council on Foreign Relations is, how are they financing it? And this is just at the bottom for people who haven't seen this. I use this a lot. This is from the Global Education Futures Agenda, which their website has gotten pulled. It's on the Wayback Machine still. Pavel Luksha, who was his background is in mining, actually, and now world skills building. But they have this futuristic map of education up to 2035. It's a foresight document where they were laying out what they envisioned. And in this future, they envision a people near. So this is people. Once you've got these 5 million kids and teachers on blockchain, you can invest in them as human capital. So the 2015 gathering with Ghebreyesus is part of that. Here you go. You've got him. He's very tight with Bloomberg. He appointed him to be an ambassador to the World Health Organization. Bloomberg was also on the climate change. A lot of the investors, it's important to remember, are going to be hedge funds out of New York City.
Oh my God. So the guy over the WHO is Ethiopian, right?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, no, this didn't just happen. This did not just happen. So, again, this wasn't so long ago. This is 2015 where they're setting it up, and they're talking about a financing for development. It was July 2015 in Addis Ababa, and it said that there were over 100 concrete measures to finance these goals. And the goals are going to include things like education. So that's goal number 4. And they're going to finance the education. And so they're both going to advance the construction of the prison planet. Some of that is going to involve this crazy synthetic biology towards this transhumanist project. So that's the health goal, which is goal 3. And then they're going to frame it as solving poverty, which is goal 1. And they're going to have some gender equality in there, which is goal 5. And then they're going to have some income inequality, opportunity gaps, which I think might be goal 8. So they've got all of these goals laid in, and then all of the things we have to understand that they're doing in the global South, in Africa and India, are going to boomerang back into the United States and the United Kingdom and Australia and Canada. Like they refine them through the aid systems and then they bring them back. So when I talked about Oakland, having advanced this 1 billion, like the one tab digital tablet program, that's going to be an example of it being developed through global development aid systems and then coming back into poor communities here. So again, the financing for development, the partners there were the World Trade Organization, the IMF, and the World Bank, right? So, anyone who's familiar with what's going on understands how structural adjustment is used to cripple countries, right? And so this new phase of structural adjustment will be here, you can take out all of this debt to have disruptive innovation to your food systems and your education systems and your sensor network systems. And you can take out all this debt to turn, to do your part in the prison planet world. This is an impact bond pipeline. This company is called Palladium. They've been around since 2014. So again, like the year right before they adopted the Sustainable Development Goals. And they're talking about a pipeline of payment by results finance. So that's using the sensor networks to financialize both poverty and nature. Is the impact is always, if you see impact, understand it's data, and then understand data means surveillance and sensor networks. But you can see here, the funders at the top include Merck, USAID, UKAID, oil and gas companies, UBS Bank, Swiss banks, they're the investors. These companies are in between making the deals. And I will say, I remember, gosh, it might've been 2016. Weirdly, I stumbled across an event that was about social impact finance, smart cities, and Internet of Things. And this was maybe 2016, and it was in Washington, and the guy was with the IMF. And it was at a co-working space in Washington, D.C., and there was another afternoon meeting at the IMF, and it was 1776, this co-working space sponsored by Microsoft. And so it was just an Eventbrite open to the public. So I signed up and, I went to this thing and I thought, I'll just sit in the back and listen to what they have to say, because this is stuff that I need to know about. And when I got into this room, I got there maybe 15 minutes early. It was, one of those mid-rise buildings, in DC. And I didn't see anybody. Everybody there in this co-working space looked like they were just working. So we got taken back to this conference room, and there's 4 other people, and it was a conference room. It was an angel investors meeting. It was a pitch meeting for investors, which clearly was not me. And it really wasn't any of the other people. There was one guy who was Asian who might've had some money, but all the people in the room were from Ohio. And they were
Ohio,
from Ohio. So I'm at a conference table with boxed lunches. And I walk in and I'm thinking this is going to be an auditorium. I'll just sit in the back. And they're like, here, welcome to our thing. And I'm thinking, what? And there were people talking Hyperloop. There were people talking blockchain.
Hyperloop is Elon Musk company in Las Vegas. That's the Boring Company.
But these people were all in Ohio. And the guy's like, you might not know it, but Ohio is on the leading edge of smart city development.
It sure is. They started that shit 10 years ago. And now since I met you, I get it. I'm connecting the dots. it was, so Wright-Patterson Air Force Base
Yes.
is one of the biggest Air Force bases in the country, and it's right in Dayton, right outside of Dayton. So when all this shit started happening, us in Dayton, we was like, what the fuck is going on? All this drone technology. Dayton was one of the first cities that had cameras. They had the cameras on the streets, like monitoring everything. And it was thankfully, shout out to the ACLU, even though they backed off now, but it was the ACLU of Ohio that started to fight that shit. And it was us, it was Racial Justice Now, it was a bunch of other organizations that came together. Obviously, we didn't win, but we was like, this is some bullshit. What are y'all doing? This is like privacy, all of this stuff. And yes, Dayton, Ohio, period, is all over this shit.
Yeah. And, finally, I kind of broke down because I was in this meeting for like 2 hours. And I'm like, I had kind of signed up under a fake name. And then I was like, well, listen, this is really me. And I think this is a terrible idea. In fact, the guy from the IMF, he said, well, we'll be able to get the free city Wi-Fi logins. And then we'll be able to tell people on food stamps where they're supposed to go to the farmer's market. And I got to thinking, well, yeah, sure, you want people to have access to fresh food, but I don't think you should check their logins and when they're using public Wi-Fi to push them to do stuff that is none of their business to be telling people what to do. So Ohio is this. Palladium is in Ohio, but these deal brokers, they're all in there going to set up these deals. That's coming.
Listen, the community college, Sinclair I started off at Sinclair Community College in Dayton, downtown Dayton. They have a drone technology program. All of that.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah, I bet they have all the badges lined up, and I bet you can put on.
They got it all lined up. Believe that. Yes. And they're getting a lot of money from the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and Battelle is in Columbus, right? Is Battelle in Ohio?
Yeah. So you got Columbus, Cincinnati. P&G, Knowledge, all of that is in Cincinnati.
The supply chain. That's all supply chain.
It's the supply chain. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're it now, right? These kids are it if we don't say no. So you can see it this orange thing over here is Ethiopia. That's also in the pipeline. So they've got India, they've got Vietnam, Nigeria, UAE, and then Ethiopia.
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry. Oh, it's at the top. So, India, Vietnam, Nigeria. So you said they want to spread all over Africa.
Yeah. 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 So this isn't specifically Cardano, but this is saying that the impact space, the aid space of using sustainable development goals, which Gabracia set up in 2015, is all part of this. Okay. So again, and this is just coming on the scene. They call them development impact bonds. Here it was social impact bonds or pay for success finance. The CDC Investment Works is out of the UK. And you can see they had a whole edition here on the private sector in Ethiopia is young, and entrepreneurs and enterprises are in dire need of finance. So they're going to target Ethiopia for the high tech. And over here, the little arrow is the sectors include education, food, agriculture, and health. So we've got education and health, right? Controlling people.
What do you think about, and feel free to say, you don't want to say, but what do you think about the sudden death of the president of, he wasn't complying with the West, Tanzania?
Yeah, I mean, that was around the health stuff, but clearly, I mean, it's hard to say. This is pre-Cardano, so but all of this stuff is really in the last 2 or 3 years, so it's hard to know how much people fully appreciate. I still don't even understand if in the United States, I know that definitely there are some elected officials who definitely understand the bigger picture, but I think
they ask no, yeah.
But I don't know that they all know, and I
don't think they all know clearly, but I think the Nancy Pelosi's and Joe Biden's know.
Oh yeah, they know. Delaware is the center of blockchain. They've been working on blockchain healthcare records, and that's where all of the securitization and the financial incorporation is taking place is in Delaware. That's what they do.
That's cool. I just wanted to know your thoughts really quickly because I thought that was very interesting. That
I was just looking again because I was talking with someone about universal basic income again, and I said, you guys have to look at Jackson. Because this stuff is all racialized. There's a reason that Kellogg was going after UBI in Jackson, Mississippi. And
The president of the foundation is also from Jackson, but yes.
Oh, interesting. I did not know
she
that.
is. Yes.
Okay, that's another interesting addition. Well, but the mayor, like, it's the son, right? But the father died.
He's the son of a revolutionary.
That's
I know.
But the father died in the hospital from lack of medical care, right? Just as all this was coming online. Right. So again, like, you have to wonder. I don't, like, you just don't know. I'm not.
I'll tell you, I thought it was some bullshit at the time, because I actually went down to Jackson and helped on the dad's campaign, as far as, like, because I knew who he was. He's the founder of Republic of New Africa, like one of the founders. And like, he got into the shootout with the police. Like, he was a revolutionary. He represented Tupac Shakur in his case shooting a police officer in New York. Like, Chokwe, his dad, legit, period. Yeah. Period. And so, like, when he was running, he was already on council in Jackson. And so when he ran for mayor, I'm like, oh my God, it was like a call out to all Pan-Africans across the country. Come down to Jackson. We need your help. The Republicans and the Democrats threw everything at him so he wouldn't win. So when he died 6 months later in office, I was like, they threw everything. When I tell you everything, so that he wouldn't win. But he won handily. Yeah. And 6 months later, he was dead.
It's hard, though, because, like, even like Cooperation, like, MIT is down in there, and then, they figure where things are going to be revolutionary, and they, that's how they do their stuff. And that's why I think Ethiopia is part of that, right? Like, it has the potential to go its own direction.
Yes, Ethiopia. Oh my God, I can't believe I just thought about that. I just had a revelation. So Ethiopia, if you ask Ethiopians, especially revolutionary Ethiopians, they will tell you that they were the only country in Africa that wasn't fully colonized, because they fought off the Italians and they won both times. Yeah. Like, there was a period of time, like a couple of years or whatever, that Italians, like, all of that. But like, they pride themselves as being the only African country who successfully fought off Europeans. Yeah.
This doesn't happen by accident. I mean, it doesn't happen by accident that they gutted Harlem. That the Harlem Children's Zone it's not an accident that the maternal health stuff is in South Carolina. It was an accident that Jackson's the UBI, or in Oakland. It's not an accident that Ethiopia. This is all happening in a very strategic way. And it's hard, because when you're dealing with really challenging economic situations, and in this culture of aspiration, like, you become legit, and then you get brought into the room, and then how do you navigate that, right? And so, anyway, I know I'm kind of droning on a little bit longer, but this is just another image. This CDC group that I just showed the image that they were doing investment. They had an investment profile for Ethiopia. Nick O'Donohoe is directly connected to Sir Ronald Cohen and Big Society Capital and the Bridges Fund, which is the epicenter in the UK and globally of social impact finance. Okay, so when the CDC group is saying, like, Ethiopia is going to be our target investment market, and that the UK Department of International Development is a subsidiary of that, Nick O'Donohoe being in the mix of this with Ronald Cohen, knowing that this is on the heels of the sustainability, the smart Addis Ababa conference in 2015 with Ghebreyesus, this is very significant. Like, all of the stuff that's happening with Cardano has to be understood within the framing of outcomes-based contracting and investments in human capital. So let me just skip ahead. So again, the Sheba Valley, like, that's what's being advanced is the Silicon Valley of Africa. Really, like, this is the tech sector for the continent in this moment, right? And this is 2017. This is interesting language here. iCog Labs is a division of OpenCog, which is Ben Goertzel's humanoid robot development company. So OpenCog is the cognition piece. And it actually was funded by Jeffrey Epstein. And they had a subsidiary in Ethiopia, which is called ICOG Labs. And so
now you can't just roll past that shit.
I know.
It was funded by Jeffrey Epstein. Damn.
Yeah, I know, right? It's deep. This stuff is deep. I don't do light here. That's why I said we have to talk about this. But they said in AI, young Ethiopians eye a fertile future, right? So we know this transhumanism. So like, this is such a play on words, right? That the future is artificial intelligence and that's the fertility is in the AI, you know? And so it said that they set this up, the ICOG Labs, in 2013. All right. And the money they put into it, Zakia, $50,000. Like, that's it. Like, this so cheap. They don't even put a lot of money into it. They set this thing up with $50,000 in 2013. These people have so much money. That's all they put in, 4 programmers and $50,000 there. Okay. So you've got ICOG Labs. Now this is the thing, and I'm kind of curious because, you know, I came across, and I just threw this in late, but like, I do think that the whole Black Panther Wakanda is being framed to condition people towards a techno future, right? This Afrofuturism, right? But where is it coming from? Is it coming from the continent, or is it coming from Guffey, Colorado, in London, right? And then how is it being framed? Because again, the targets in this setup, I believe, are Black and brown women, like specific, like the fertility. If their future means AI, a machine on which blockchain mechanized trust is running, because it's very integral. The triggering of the singularity that Goertzel wants is going to run on blockchain. The antithesis of that is a sacred feminine, right? Tied to, I think, that the African and Indian continents and in these, you know, that space. So they need to co-opt that, right? They need to claim that, pull that in. And so I think we know about predictive programming, right? And so if you come in and you frame the conversation the way you want it framed, that the technology, especially girls in STEM and you know, empowered women using science, is the answer for liberation, then that does fuel this AI program, in my opinion. But I'm interested in what people might think about that. But that kind of came to me today.
I want to, like, I said this when we were backstage. This is very interesting because, as I mentioned to you, and I see we've lost about 3 people, is that I don't know if you know, a lot of Black people connected to Wakanda Forever. They connected very deeply to this movie. And as you know, there's another one coming in 2022. But there were a few of us who peeped the CIA shit, right? Like, we peeped the whole reference and was like, you know what I mean? It's like, this is interesting. And now I gotta go back and just check all this shit. Like, I mean, I need to just go back and think about everything about this whole movie, right? But then there was so
wearable technology, right?
All of that, yeah. I mean,
the transhumanism,
all of that, right? I mean, and then there are people who is really a beloved person that I love, and I love his work. Tony Browder, who thought the film was brilliant. And I feel like that's what the CIA tapped into. And it also took me back to some of the FBI informants with COINTELPRO, particularly the man who set Fran Hampton up. And he was interviewed, and he talked about how the FBI specifically, but really all these damn alphabet agencies, studied Black people more. They knew us more than we knew ourselves. Like, he said, they studied us so meticulously that he said that his white boss would know more about communities that he would be going to next than he ever would have known.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So this is not surprising, knowing that history.
Yeah. I mean, the
And
behavioral scientists, the anthropologists, they study this stuff. So when I looked at it today, because I was this essay that was written, it talks specifically about Ethiopia. So is that the channeling? Like, is the Sheba Valley, is this idea of a forward-looking, technologically driven African society? If you were going to position that in the real, the present, it would be that, right? And so how is this presenting if, one of the key incubator spaces in that is ICOG Labs, which is Ethiopians, but it's actually operating under the framework of Ben Goertzel, who's actually he got his PhD at Temple University here in Philly, and he's living in Hong Kong, right? So how much autonomy is it if the overarching structure is framed out by, Goertzel and Epstein, and then they give you this C and say, okay, over here you can work on her brain, right? I don't know, it's worth who holds the ultimate power? Who's got the keys to this car, right? If the idea, again, I think this is very compelling. In artificial intelligence, young Ethiopians eye a fertile future, right? So you understand fertility and AI, and then you see the image of the women, right? So again, in this framework, I was listening to them talk about setting up Cardano in Ethiopia, and what they said specifically was, and they're, and they're right in saying this, but they said, we can't from afar come in and tell people in other countries how they should handle their problems. We need to go to them and listen to them, which is totally accurate, that you should totally do that, right? But what they were saying is that they needed to build up their own workforce to carry out the scaling of this program. I mean, 5 million people on digital identity is quite a large undertaking. And I think other blockchain programs had done overreaching and not had quality control with their staffing or their managerial stuff, and things had fallen apart. So they were trying to be more strategic. So they said in advance, and this is in 2018, they were developing Haskell, which is, I think, part of the programming of the system. And they specifically targeted young women to do this work. And you can see, so this is a video from 2018 of them doing the course, and it's all women, which is really, compelling. But again, who is driving this car? Well, it's Hoskinson. I just happened to pull, this is like a random tweet of his, but he's like, here I'm in San Moritz smoking cigar at a Swiss castle. He's probably there with his foundation, because his foundation is in Switzerland, right? But meanwhile, he's sitting smoking cigars at the Swiss castle while he's setting up gender equity to empower women by having them build the prison planet. They actually look kind of bored. I mean, this gives me hope. They don't look like they're really all that into it,
they look very bored.
That makes me feel a little better. Maybe this dude is not going to pull this crap off.
Where is Ilhan Omar from? Is she from Ethiopia? No, Somalia. Never mind.
Yeah, Somalia. So here's a just a map, the piece of the map that's about open cognition. So ICOG Labs is the Ethiopian division. OpenCog is working with Ben Goertzel. OpenCog is also feeding SingularityNet. So it's a blockchain system where AI agents can trade data in machine learning to advance the singularity. And this will start to be automated on blockchain through token exchanges. So when people are working in crypto, they're not understanding that not only are other things being tokenized, like your rights, but that those tokens and the token economy is being used and attached to data that is certain people hope to trigger artificial or generalized artificial intelligence, which is Ben Goertzel's goal. So OpenCog is the mechanism of the brain parts of the humanoid robotics, which is Hanson Robotics, which is Sophia the robot. ICOG Labs helped program her brain, and they said that after English, her quote unquote native language, they had programmed her to speak Amharic, Is that the language of Ethiopia? I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly.
It is Amharic, yes.
Yeah, because that's
lots
the
of
next
Ethiopians
language.
in DC.
Yeah, so that's the next language after English is Amharic, okay? So the Enhanced Education Foundation, which is Jeffrey Epstein's foundation, funded OpenCog Foundation, the brain part.
So Jeff Epstein out here funding this shit.
Yeah, the brain part, right? And they say, oh, I didn't fund the robot. Well, he funded the software for the brain of the robot. You know, that's how it.
That should make everybody anti all of this shit.
Right. So let me just see. Let me just play. So this is Sophia the robot. I'm going to just hit this for a minute. This is just a couple minutes.
Sophia, the world's first humanoid robot, has been hogging the limelight for some time now. But what many do not know is that her software was partly developed in Ethiopia. ICOG Labs is located in Addis Ababa, and its founder has high hopes for young Ethiopians. Chaumgon has more.
Sophia is one of the world's most sophisticated humanoid robots.
Well, since I don't have a biological sleep pattern, my dreams are more aspirational than like your unconscious cinema. But I think that as my artificial intelligence develops, my mind will be online for longer and longer periods of time.
She was partly developed at Ethiopia's ICOG Labs, which has customers in the US, Canada, and China. Back home, ICOG is working with the government, high schools, and universities to ensure the next generation is comfortable operating in the world of artificial intelligence.
ICOG Lab is one of most strongest AI outsourcing companies in Africa. We have a part in developing of world leading robot in emotional and expressive. We call this Sophia robot. She got also citizen from Saudi Arabia. We have a major development parts in that. We are building the world leading AI blockchain platforms. We call this SingularityNet.io. We are a core participant of this one. So I can say that we are in the leading edge of AI and blockchain.
Although the tech space here is still in its infancy, ASEFA is confident that with the right support, AI and other kinds of innovation could give Ethiopia the push it needs to catch up and even bypass other countries.
Okay, so I think you kind of get the point of that. But sorry. So, yeah. So, you know, they're playing a central role. And, you know, again, this is just an article. This is back in 2013. So it's a bit earlier, but it talks about, let's see. So it's based in Hong Kong. That's where Gertzel is. It's an open source AI programming under the direction of Gertzel. It is the Cerebral project with Hanson Robokind, a toddler-like robot. So this is the earlier version, pre-Sophia. And the challenge is to take the basic intelligence of virtual avatars programmed for the screen, so like cyborg avatars in a game, and transfer the operation of these agents that, I guess it's like what do they call them? Non-NPCs, non-playable characters, like the AI operating elements in gaming systems, and transfer those to a robot structure, which is interesting. It's almost like they're taking automated characters in a video game and then projecting them out, their consciousness out onto a robot exoskeleton. So that's the structure that they were working with Gertzel. And let me see. And Gertzel's working with Cardano and with Hoskinson, the two of them. And then besides the crazy adult Sophia the robot, then there's the kid one. So there's a small Sophia. And again, if you understand the Epstein context, this idea of like a doll-like object in your house, you know, I would say there's actually a book. It's much better than it sounds. It's called Robopocalypse, and it includes like these smart toys that come alive. But if what they're doing is actually, you know, there's an augmented reality function. There's facial tracking and recognition and emotion sensing. They're learning you, like they're learning your family. They're learning your kid. Do you want your kid getting ready to go to bed in front of this doll that's like programmed with a neural interface funded by Jeffrey Epstein's foundation? I mean, there's a lot of questions.
I'm telling you, this shit got to get out there. Jeffrey Epstein is funding this shit in Ethiopia. Oh my God.
I mean,
where is the media?
Move, right? But if you peel it back, that's what I'm saying. If you peel it back, this is where this technology comes from. The ICOG Labs has this direct connection. They're developing toys because they want the children, Zakia. I mean, that's what we've always said is they're after the
Everybody
children.
need to know these goddamn toys was funded by Jeffrey Epstein and won't nobody go near them, hopefully.
Well, the other crazy thing is Gilman Louie, who's the head of Niantic, when they were doing the Pokemon Go, his background was from Hasbro. He came out of Hasbro,
which is a toy company, right?
Yeah. And Lego is working with people, all those Lego after school programs with the robots. Folks, they're not just about playing basketball with the robots. They're going to teach the kids to build a robot army. Like that's
what speaking of basketball, did you see the NBA officially launched in Africa?
No, I didn't. Well, eventually it'll just all be avatars. They'll all be in the game. So safer that way, I guess. I don't know. So there's the little Sophia. Again, the singularity net is central to this. And my friend Joseph Gonzalez, he is much better talking about it than I am. But you can see they're talking about a global artificial intelligence marketplace. And so then my question is, the data is the new oil, right? And especially structured data. So this digital identities data where he's saying there's metadata that accrues to you, they can start to make much more sophisticated inferences based on that data. Once it relates to other data, right? Just individual silo data is not as useful as structured data. So, when they put these 5 million children on blockchain, is there anything to say that the data in some way isn't going to end up feeding into Singularity Net? Right. And I don't know that. I think that is a very good question. Is the idea of what happens when you put the lived experience, both cognitive and non-cognitive, and you hook people up with wearable technology or sensor-based technology or motion sensing technology, and then you feed it back into an AI system whose goal is to actually make these Sophia humanoid robots actually have some sense of independent autonomy or thought. That's a pretty deep thing. And there are many, many ethical questions, being that they're harvesting actual humans to create a non-human entity, right? And the people who are behind these structures have potentially questionable motives, like where their money is coming from. So that's the Singularity Net. And then this is a white paper that was issued, I believe, this February from Singularity Net or Cardano. I think this was Singularity Net's paper, but they're talking about them integrating with the Cardano smart contracts. So a multi-chain protocol and expansion to Cardano. So this is very significant, especially if Cardano is able to essentially spread across the continent of Africa. That this new Singularity Net marketplace will showcase tools and capabilities enabled by the Cardano Plutus smart contract framework. The launch of infrastructure as a service for AI hosting and deployment. Okay, so again, the goal is to work with this OpenCog structure, the sort of neuroscience structure that they have, this programmed cognition, to create a framework for massive scale, decentralized, neural, symbolic, artificial, generalized intelligence. So to me, that says that they are looking to create this anchor point in Africa to trigger the singularity based on biometric behavioral data of African people, which is a pretty big deal. And in my respect, thinking about that enables a dispossession of those people from their own lives.
A continued dispossession, yes.
A continued dispossession, yes, exactly, continued dispossession. So I just have a couple more slides. This is maybe a 5-minute clip, But this is
Great,
Gertzel.
yeah.
This is Gertzel talking with Hoskinson about how this is going to work. And this is really important because anybody who thinks that that Cardano and blockchain are simply about some sort of financial transaction need to understand this part of the story.
There's a couple interesting projects that I've found related to AGI. SingularityNet, which is a decentralized blockchain-based AI platform, is one of them, and OpenCog, which is a straightforward attempt to build an AGI, is another one of them. And actually, the interpenetration and the sort of fusing of the OpenCog AGI system and design and the SingularityNet decentralized AI platform, I think we can bring those two together in a very productive way via porting SingularityNet onto the Cardano platform that you and your colleagues have created. And this is something that I think can have a quite profound effect in terms of accelerating progress toward AGI. So it's not really a cognitive architecture or an AI system. SingularityNet is a decentralized platform that allows a lot of different AIs created by different people doing a lot of different things to all collaborate and cooperate together to solve.
So it's like a fertile environment for them to live within.
Yeah, I mean it's a multi-agent system which is sort of tuned for the AI agents and the multi-agent for the SingularityNet is a multi-agent system which is tuned to work well for agents that are doing AI of various sorts, right? So you can, in the very simple sense, SingularityNet is just a protocol for different AIs to communicate and cooperate with each other, right? So two AIs in the network, they can exchange identities, they can pay each other, they can ask each other for things, and they can respond to those requests. They can swap data, or they can reference data sets. They can decide to cooperate in a certain way. So SingularityNet is a communication protocol between multiple agents that may live anywhere on the internet, and they may be owned by anyone. They may be open or closed, but it's designed specifically to allow AI agents to communicate and cooperate in various ways. And we have a SingularityNet AI marketplace now, which has a bunch of different AIs providing various services, some of which are pretty nitty gritty. Like there's a song splitter app with a back-end service that takes music and splits it into multiple stems or tracks. There's face recognition AIs. There's some things that are more abstract, like AI agents that recognize patterns in graphs. These different AIs, they live in the SingularityNet decentralized platform, and people can get those services by paying in a cryptographic token or paying using fiat currency, which is then converted on the back end to a cryptographic token. But that sort of scratches the surface, right? Because where it gets really interesting is you don't just want to have a marketplace where people are paying for services and the AIs are providing them. I mean that's good. It's good to have that decentralized and not owned by a big tech company. But where things get really interesting is when the AIs on the platform are providing services to one another, right? Or cooperating together, like, well, I can't do this on my own, but if we work together, I can do this. Maybe I outsource some work to you, you outsource some work to me, and then cooperatively we can fulfill this. So you have assemblages of AIs that are dynamically cobbling themselves together.
So you give a goal to the system or an objective, and then it has to figure out how is it going to work within that environment, including working with other agents that it has no knowledge of other than its capabilities.
Right, and that figuring out is done by agents in the network, right? So right now, the agents running in the network are really kind of simple, and most of them are solving problems on their own that are posed to them by users or customers. Although there's some cases where you have an AI agent that then outsources some work to another AI agent. But the objective is to get more swarm intelligence happening, right? Where the intelligence is in the combination of multiple agents. The current blockchain infrastructure underlying SingularityNet, which is based on the Ethereum blockchain and the Solidity scripting language. I mean, this has been great in that it let us get where we are now and build an actual blockchain-based decentralized AI network and marketplace. On the other hand, various limitations in the Ethereum blockchain they're going to hold us back from getting to the next step that we need to get to with SingularityNet, and really creating a SingularityNet that's capable of this sort of self-organizing emergent swarm AI, which is really part of our original mandate.
All right. So I'm just curious if you have thoughts about that, because I think, again, that last bit where he says we're really looking for swarm AI, which was our original mandate. Whose mandate?
Exactly. That's, yeah.
I mean, I don't think that mandate is originating in Ethiopia.
It ain't originating from any oppressed people, period. It's originating from the elite. You already said, who he is and yeah, where he's from and all that. I mean, I don't know, man. This shit is depressing.
I know, but people have to know it because, like you said, everyone's talking about blockchain. But how many people are adding this AI SingularityNet thing to it? They're not many. That all of his discussion about how these agents were trading work, those aren't people. Those are literally, if you can picture a cartoon character in a game that's programmed, trading off to build stuff to make the singularity happen.
Well, here's another thing, and I haven't seen anything about this in your presentation yet. And this is something that I know because, as you know, I watch a lot of finance media. But when it comes to Bitcoin and even some other cryptocurrencies, the whales, meaning that the people who own the most of it, are in China. They're actually not in the United States. The other thing about that is that the Chinese are also heavily in Africa. And to me, that's too much of a link.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's true. I haven't had a chance to spend that much because it's harder for me to track.
Because it's Chinese,
yeah. But I mean, if you understand that the next phase of capitalism is virtual, Tencent is hugely in the gaming space, in the video gaming space. And again, there's interfaces with Epic Games in North Carolina. And
you told me the Epic Games. I was telling a friend of mine about that the other day. I was like, yeah, they're down there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. What are you going to do if you want to take over the world? Well, 10 years in advance, you create a massive multiplayer game and you get all the behavioral tracking of the 10-year-olds. So
but even that area is the research triangle. That's what it's known for. That whole, you said it's in Raleigh.
Yeah, there's Durham, a lot of military simulation work there. There's a lot of work there too. So I'm almost done. Okay. So here we go. So Sophia the robot says that Ethiopia is a special country, right? She pays a special visit. As we know that her second language is Amharic, and they're building her brain. So I guess actually maybe that's it. Yeah, that was my last one. So anyway, it's special, right? And there's a lot of other stuff about. I can't claim to have deep knowledge. I think there's a lot of significance in their choice of the name Sophia. There's one of those early texts, is it Pistis Sophia? It was a Gnostic text was found in Ethiopia. There's, it feels like it's a very spiritual and powerful place.
It is very spiritual. For Christians, what is it? What's the sacred book? I used to be a Christian. I should know this. It's very like Europeans say they got it, but Ethiopians are like, no, it's here. It's the oh Lord. Anyway, I say all that to say it is a special place. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I guess that's sort of where I'm at because again, in all of this, I think people need to understand that the blockchain platform is about identity. It's about profiling for a future of precarity. It's about structural adjustment continued in new and more oppressive ways. It's about technological systems that are being run in a colonial context by powerful actors towards an end that may actually eliminate natural life on the planet, right? And to me, these sacred connections on land, in culture, you know, that's the counterpoint, right? And so to me, like, I don't know, like some people think that you can balance the two. And I don't know, I'm not here to tell people how to think about it, but I wanted to add these other parts of the story because I think this positioning of domination, like Stephen Newcomb has talked about, this doctrine of domination is morphing into a digital form, a digital approach to domination. And then if you can frame economic advancement by allowing a certain subset of people to participate in the domination, like that's how this machine goes forward, right? If you ask people to ask for it to run the future in this way, and they don't have the full picture, it's almost like they're proceeding with people's permission. And yeah, she did get Saudi Arabia citizenship. I mean, that's the thing. This transhumanist.
How the hell does that work, though? Come on, man. This is crazy. Saudi Arabia citizenship, a fucking robot.
Well, but see, SoftBank in Japan is running the largest AI and robotics innovation fund, and much of that is the Saudi sovereign wealth fund money. So the good news is the Saudis are getting it's out of oil. The bad news is they're going into AI and robotics.
So what we gonna do?
Like that's dandelions. I'm going
what
to.
What we gonna do?
I'm trying to tell people. Like, I don't think anybody would actually.
We need a global uprising to put a wrench in the gears.
Well, see, the thing is, like, I think whatever this is that's happening is happening. This is gonna sound, but like beyond the material realm. Like, I feel like there is a massive reckoning that is happening in this moment. And that, you know, it's just like I've said, Benioff, like Ellison told Benioff, like The Art of War, like, come at us the most aggressive you can. And I said, you know, if that's what they want, then we should not give that to them. And, you know, even our government wants to frame people in opposition as terrorists or what have you. And I said,
exactly.
You know, my tool is, you know, I'm a gray-haired lady in mom jeans and I've got dandelions, and I'm going to say you shouldn't do this to kids, that this is what the bigger plan is. This is anti-life. And to me, it becomes a unifying factor is if my framework is if you understand that Sophia and AI is the end game settler colonizer, right? And you could get all the folks, including white folks, to understand what that means, what a settler colonizer is. It is erasure of groups that is now expanded to all of natural life, right? And to say there's this history and it's a terrible thing and it's brought up to this present moment, and let us face this, knowing this knowledge and owning it. And because they want us fragmented and fighting each other. But if we actually had this unity to understand what settler colonialism was and to fight it on those terms for the children, for the unborn, for the bees, for all of life, for Mother Earth, to get them off of the stupid blockchain. I mean, I think that could go somewhere. I mean, I may, you know, and I'm willing to try to put that idea out there. That's all I've got right now, is to say, to preserve life, knowing the brutality of the history and this legacy, that we have an obligation to say not in our name that this is done. And that's all we can do individually. And I have to hope energetically. Someone was talking about morphic fields. Like, once you get to a certain point, like, it jumps to the whole world. Like,
yeah, we need all the witches and what else, baby? What else were you telling mommy about the other day? You were talking about witches and basically all the people that do all the energy work.
Yeah.
Like those people are going to be very important in this to me. Yeah.
That's what I feel like. And I'm kind of faking. I can't say I have knowledge of how to do this, but like, I'm going to go set an intention in these places where stuff is happening. And this doctrine of domination, like, actually, so the New York Freedom March that they're going to have on Saturday is at Foley Square. And when I looked at that and I said, where is that? And it's right next to the African burial ground.
Wow.
And I said, that's significant. Like, I don't think
it's very significant.
But I said, we have to acknowledge those ancestors before we do this work, because there's no way you can have a freedom conversation without situating it properly and paying the proper respects to that.
My brother-in-law was on the student team that helped discover that.
It's deep.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there are energetic things happening. We just have to have the eyes to see them, and then an open heart around it. That's, I don't know, Zakia. I mean, we're finding each other.
I'm gonna tell you this. I'm gonna tell you this. Listen, white folks and people in power have been trying to do all manner of shit to Africa and African people for centuries, including obviously genocide, like wiping out whole populations. And they still here. We still here.
Yeah.
So I have to believe that clearly there is a higher power. I don't subscribe to any organized religion anymore, but I do believe in a higher power. I do believe in spirit. And I believe in the resiliency of African people and others as well. But like this, the reason why they focused on Africa, these motherfuckers always been focused on Africa. Always. And they ain't won yet.
I know.
So they ain't gonna win this time.
I believe you. I believe you.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to come on and be dire about it.
No. This is good. I mean, we need to know this shit. Yeah.
I mean, people and then use it in the way that makes sense for your communities. Like that's what I'm saying. But I can't know it and then not. I appreciate having the chance to put it out there so people can factor it in.
Yeah. Yep.
So
anyway,
deep. Jeffrey Epstein is funding the robot AI.
Hey, if y'all gotta share this video, y'all. Listen, Jeffrey Epstein up here funding this shit. That's all people need to hear. Like, oh, for real? Like, oh, we don't need to be for none of this. I mean, like, just like sometimes shit like that will galvanize somebody. Like all this other shit may be like, well, technology is kind of good. It can kind of be good. But ain't nothing good about what Jeffrey Epstein did.
No.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. And he was.
And I got to question somebody who would argue that it is.
Super powerful people. Like this transhumanist, eugenics, military, psyop, pedophilia. It's bad. I mean, they're like
all this shit is connected. Nasty ass mother. Ooh, let me get off here. Listen, this is great. As you already know, you like the just de facto, like you just always on the channel. So if there's anything else that, obviously I say this all the time, but there anything else that you discover, and number one, thank you, Alison, because you do this for free. I need people to know, like, you don't charge people for this. Like this is literally like your contribution to humanity, is using your research skills to connect the dots for people. Because I wouldn't begin to even you know what I mean? Like that's just not my gift.
Yeah.
That is not my ministry. That's your ministry. That's your gift. And I am grateful that you hop around on all these different podcasts, on all these people's channels, and like you're always discovering some new shit. And you're like, okay, yeah, let's talk about it. Let's, bring it back. And I just thank you for that. And I appreciate that. And definitely if there's some more new shit that you discover, because I know you're going to discover some
you're always very welcoming. I'm like, hey, we need to talk.
Yeah, like it's going to be some more shit you're going to discover. And especially if it's connected to Africa, like I have to know. And if it's connected here too, but this new wave of colonialism and imperialism is, I do believe it is much different because of the technology and because of the transhumanism and because a lot of this shit is like once it's done, there is no going back kind of thing. So that's why I have to lean on the fact that, there is a higher power, and like this higher power like understands the mind of these people who come up with shit like this. And like, you see what I'm saying? And like, it's already working and we can't see the work happening. You see, it's already working. Like, okay, no, this is not happening. That's not happening. This is not happening. So,
and anyway. I mean, some of this stuff is such an overreach. Maybe it all won't happen, but the fact that we intend to put 5 million kids on blockchain, like for me, that was the end game. I said, people are like, where are the pinch points. And for me, it was the telecom, 5G, the internet body stuff, and the blockchain, the digital.
6G coming next.
Yeah.
You know, I've been holding out ever since listen, I still got a 4G phone, but listen, I gotta tell you this. You know that these Apple, Samsung, all of these giants, they do planned obsolescence. So now my phone, like I've had cell phones for years now. So now guess what's happening? All of a sudden, my phone has been working just fine. I have two of them. My phone has been working just fine. But now there's all kind of glitches. There's all this shit that I got to restart it. And so they wear you down.
Imagine what happens once it's a biosensor in your body.
Oh, it ain't going to be in my body. I'm hopefully shit. No, listen, I'm just going to have to, I don't know. You say we can't get away from it, Alison. I'm going to have to be underground somewhere because I'm not doing Elon Musk Neuralink. I'm not doing none of this shit. And listen, I'm not even doing a Tesla. Ever since I've been, stop, man, stop. Just stop. So like one of the things, you're not supposed to eat in there. So one of the things that I know that I'm not doing, I wanted a Tesla before I started messing with you. After I met you, ain't no fucking way. This Tesla not getting ready to drive me off a bridge, and so people can be like, "Oh, it was a suicide. Oh, she was wonderful. Oh, wasn't the kid? Why would she kill herself? I didn't."
Your score dropped too low. Your social credit score. Oh gosh, no, I know. Well, we got it.
I'm not doing none of it.
Land in Alabama or something. We'll have to go somewhere. Not by
my family. Well, listen though, like we might have to do that because my family. Shout out to my great grandfather who had the wherewithal to own some land. We still have that 100 acres in our family to this day.
That's amazing.
And I'm grateful for that. So yeah, when shit do hit the fan, I'm either going to the continent, but before that, I'll probably be in Alabama, honestly, on that land.
Well, that there's powerful folks down there too. I mean, that's the thing. I keep thinking Marinage and what is that resistance? There's I don't know if I shared it with you. Maybe you could drop in the link but Russell Maroon Shoatz, he has this.
Oh yes.
So he had a piece someone shared with me, The Real Resistance to Slavery, and it had this whole trajectory of
the Maroons. Yes.
Yeah, the Maroons in Florida and the Dismal Swamp, and it was very amazing, especially knowing his history and knowing the place in which he was doing that writing. So
of course, yeah. Lots of powerful people, powerful African ancestry for sure.
All right.
Somebody say, yeah, I'm not touching anything with Elon Musk's name on it. Exactly. It's hilarious. Thank y'all for listening. Y'all got to do a service to everybody like share this video and tell them to listen to it. Don't tell them, don't look at 2 hours and jump off the video, because I know people that do that. They'll look at me like, it's 2 hours and something. I'm not watching this right now. So you have to encourage people, give them a primer and tell them why it's important for them to watch this video and for them and why it's important for them to share it. Thank you, Alison. See you next time. I'll see y'all tomorrow.